growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Roach Growth listeners. Today I have Rosalind. She is a divorce and co-parenting coach. Thank you, Rosalind, for being here today.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, walk us through. I know people understand the idea of divorce, right? You get an attorney involved. Everything kind of happens throughout the process. But you kind of focus more so on, I guess, the process and the mindset. And with kids involved. Walk us a little bit through kind of what your company entails.
Yes. So I'm the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. My name is Rosalind Sedacca, and I'm a divorce and co-parenting coach. And what I do is help parents before, during, and long after divorce to make the best decisions regarding their entire family, and especially the children, so the children don't pay the price and don't fall through the cracks, as we too often see in the headlines and in families that we know. And that means making parents aware that every decision that they make before, during, and after divorce is going to impact everyone in the family, especially the children. So if you're divorcing without kids, it doesn't matter what kind of craziness you create, because ultimately it ends. There's a point when the divorce is over and you go on your separate ways. But if you're divorcing with children, you're going to be involved in those children's lives for the rest of your life. And so you have to be much more mindful of what you say and what you do and the impact of everything that you do on your kids. And that's where I come into play, helping and guiding and advising parents. And I like to talk to both parents. I could work with individually mothers or fathers, but I love talking to both of them together because I'm an objective third party. I don't favor mothers or fathers. I protect the children and help them understand that their children can be scarred emotionally and psychologically, or their children can go through a very smooth process and have a happy ending, that I call it. And it's up to the parents. So the sooner I can talk to them, the sooner the parents usually get the fact that they can do this in a more mature, responsible way for everyone in the family. And we have smooth endings to the situation and the co-parenting that goes on for the rest of the family's life.
Is this pretty normal? People do coaching and so bring on a coach and then also bring on a divorce attorney. Is this pretty normal?
It's more and more normal. Over the last 3 decades, it's become more and more understandable, because when you have children, there's so many more complications, especially in the parenting plan that has to be created, the custody, who sees the kids when and how often, and all the health issues and other decisions to be made. So rather than going straight to an attorney, it's helpful to be having conversations with me, because I focus on the emotional and psychological pitfalls to avoid. And I work with attorneys because there's many child-focused attorneys out there. And I try to steer clients to avoid litigation, going into the courts, letting the courts make decisions about your life and your children's lives. And I encourage mediation as opposed to litigation. And there are child-centered divorce-oriented attorneys, family-focused attorneys who really care about the family. So I help families find the best attorneys who are going to be low conflict. And there's also a process called amicable divorce that's new, that I highly recommend, because these are attorneys who are trained to have an amicable outcome in the divorce. And what a difference when you're talking to someone whose goal is to give you an amicable divorce, as opposed to someone whose goal is to just count hours of being paid. And the longer they keep you in court, the more money the attorney makes at the price of everyone in the family. So there are choices and options we have today, and that's the good news. And people can find professionals who are going to guide them in a better direction.
I hear of divorces taking years to kind of actually get cleaned up and get finalized. I mean, in your process and your coaching, is there usually a set time frame that it takes for you?
There's no set time frame, but usually when it takes years, money is usually the major factor that goes on. When there's a lot of real estate, when there's a lot of resources, financial resources that are being fought over, then it can go into months and years, and those are high conflict cases usually. Most cases, most people can't afford to spend years in the courts, and most cases are resolved much more simply. But no two divorces are the same. So there's no rules about it. What's important is for the parents to understand the process and understand the emotional and psychological needs of their children at whatever age and stage of life those kids are at, and then make the decisions that are best for their family. And what works for your sister-in-law, what worked for your friend or your cousin isn't necessarily what's going to work for you. So it's better not to get advice from people you know, and get advice from someone who is focused on helping you have the smoothest experience all the way through, and then transitioning after the divorce. A lot of people forget that when the divorce ends, the rest of their life goes on. And if you have kids, you're going to be parenting or co-parenting those kids together. And that means through decades and decades ahead. So why not start the process on the best possible terms so that your kids aren't embarrassed when the two parents are in the same room for a birthday party? The kids aren't ashamed of the fighting that the parents go through when they're together. When the kids can have a happy time at their wedding and not be worried about the two parents. All of those things are unnecessary. And I try to shake those parents up as early on as possible to let them understand that this is the gift you're giving to the children that you supposedly love. And if you love them, you want their lives to be peaceful. After all, the divorce is not about the kids aren't responsible for your divorce, and they deserve to have the respect and the emotional peace of mind without having to be a mediator and being between the fighting that's going on in your life. So it's something that parents need to stop and be mindful about. And then they could make better choices, because supposedly you love your kids and you care about the outcome for them.
All right, well, let's rewind. Let's rewind to you, Rosalind. I mean, where did this passion for divorce coaching, I guess, come from?
Well, it came from my own experience. When I had a divorce when my son was 11 years old, and it was the most difficult decision I made, because I didn't want to screw him up, and you never know what's going to happen when your family breaks up. But there was years and years of conflict, and I felt that this was going to be a much better outcome for him. And he was showing signs of stress, headaches and things, being at home. And I knew that we would be better off in two separate homes. His father was a good father. My problems weren't with him as a father. There were other issues that we had. And so we had the divorce, went through the process, and learned a lot along the way, because this was back in the 90s. There wasn't a lot of support then. And we had to figure out how to co-parent effectively and go through raising my son from 11 on to adulthood. And one day when my son was in his early 20s, he came to me out of the blue and he said, "You know, Ma, you and Daddy really did a good job with the divorce, and I want to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them, and I think you guys did a good job." And I just let out such a sigh of relief, because you hold on to guilt. You don't know if you're messing your kids up. And I realized at that point that I had a lot to share. I learned so much through the experience of divorcing and co-parenting. And because my son gave me such a thumbs up and said, "You did a good job," I knew that the things that I learned and that we learned were effective, that I could share with other people. So at that point, and this was years later after the divorce, 2 decades later, I founded the Child-Centered Divorce Network and became a divorce and co-parenting coach. And because my background was in writing, I also, in addition to one-on-one coaching, I created several ebooks and e-courses and programs so that people who can't afford coaching or after coaching can still get support in a number of important arenas, such as how do I break the divorce news to the kids? How do we deal with anger and conflict in our co-parenting? Dating after divorce as a parent is a very important topic because you don't want to be out in the dating world in midlife and make another mistake and have another relationship broken off. So what do I do differently? And how do I date when I have kids at home? Because there's another factor involved that's beyond what it used to be when you were in your early 20s. So all of this are factors that I cover and help parents through the process and support them after the divorce. And it makes a big difference because we have a lot of really happy endings to the experience. And that's what I'm hoping for everyone who's getting a divorce today.
All right, let's rewind back again. Because I know we keep on going a little tangents. We kind of like, I know you have talking points and all that kind of stuff because you're passionate about this. So let's rewind back to your divorce, right? I know you said that the situation there, and then later on your son told you about it. So it's the saying, right? There's basically your view, their view, and what actually happened. What at that time, right? What do you think your ex-husband looked at the situation? Did he feel that your coaching aspect of it or how you handle it? Because the first time doing something is probably worse than the first time, the last time you did it a week ago, right? Where you're helping someone else out. What was his perception on the whole process of how you're coaching?
Well, I wasn't the coach, so I had no experience with divorce more than anyone else did, and neither did he. What we had in common, and what hopefully most families have in common if you're a parent, is that we loved our son, we loved our child, and we knew that we wanted to do everything that was best for him. And that hook alone is all you need to stop and say, wait a minute, let's make sure we're not doing things that are destructive for him. So we found ways to get along and show up at important occasions, all the school events and graduations and moving on, sports and all the activities my son had. And when he got married, we were both at his wedding and we danced with each other one time. We both remarried, so we brought our spouses. And we now have a granddaughter that we all love. And I see my ex periodically at happy occasions. That's a healthier way of going through it. It doesn't work that way for everyone. And there's no absolutes about how it should be. But one thing I learned along the way is better communication skills, how to be more flexible, how to cooperate with one another. Because it's inevitable when you're going through co-parenting that things are going to change. You're going to get sick. You're going to have an accident. You're going to be late at work. And you have to call one another and say, hey, can you pick Johnny up an hour earlier because I can't be there. And you want to learn how to cooperate, because if you do, your ex is more likely to cooperate with you back. You need each other. You're a team. You're a partnership. And that's what we learned. We learned how to cooperate. And I knew that when I was doing things, and if I was out on a date, that my son was in the best possible hands because he was with his father. I didn't have to worry. It wasn't like a strange babysitter. So that was a sense of security and peace of mind for me, a sense of peace of mind for my ex. And when we had battles, we communicated in the best possible way to make sure we got through. And it works when you're both caring about that.
All right, let me rephrase the question then. Sorry. If you were the coach for your own divorce at that time happened, what feedback, and I know you talked about better communication, so maybe the communication wasn't on par of what you would suggest to your clients now, but what were mistakes or items that you took on yourself if you were to coach your younger self? And I mind you, this before you know what you know now. So there's probably some mistakes that you did make.
Well, yes, we made all kinds of mistakes, common mistakes that you learn how to own things and be more responsible, and you learn how to cooperate. That was the biggest thing that we both learned, and that battling hurt our son. So one day we were together. I was moving out of the house, my ex and I got into a battle, and my son started crying, 11 years old, and he's crying. And my ex said to me, "Look what you're doing to our child. You're destroying our family." And my son stopped and said, "Daddy, I'm not crying because you're divorcing. I'm crying because you're fighting. Would you stop fighting?" And that was a huge lesson for both of us. And I later learned that conflict is the number one thing that is most damaging to children, whether you're married or not. When you're exposing your kids to conflict, fighting around them that they could see or hear, even if it's in the other room and the door's closed, it hurts them. It wounds them because they're helpless to do anything about it, and they love both parents and they don't know what they can do. So at that point, we just realized that we can't fight around our son, and we never did again. And that made a huge difference for him to go on in his life. So those were the important things that we picked up on, luckily early enough on. And we intuitively knew that we had to treat each other with respect, my ex and I. That bad mouthing one another to my son is going to hurt him, because again, he loved us both. And kids don't want to be forced to take sides, and they don't want you to be turning them into your therapist or your confidant. So telling them bad things, we wouldn't be divorced if your dad didn't have an affair, if your mother wasn't an alcoholic. All of those things sometimes seem very justified, but it hurts the children to hear that. It's not appropriate to tell your children adult things. So we slowly picked up on those things by making a mistake and then seeing the impact on our son, talking about it and saying, we're not going to do that again. And that's where the wisdom slowly came across over time, and that I could tell parents immediately right up front and say, there's certain things that we just don't do. Don't do this, that, and the other thing. And then life is smoother right from the get-go. So using what I learned made a big difference to help other people avoid it.
So at the time of the divorce, you were an author, correct? And that's how you're making
I was a marketing writer, advertising and marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so from there, were you always in that career before you transitioned over to
yes,
this?
I was in that career for decades. And
Okay.
I was in the career for, through the divorce and after the divorce too. It wasn't until 20 years later when my son came to me grown up and made that comment about the divorce that I even thought about sharing what I knew from the divorce. And that all shifted later on.
So you had this epiphany, and how quick after the epiphany of hearing those words from your son did you put together this plan to build this business?
Relatively quickly, over the next few months. What I had done is create a storybook to break the divorce news to him. It came to me after weeks of sleepless nights. How am I going to tell my son about the divorce? That's one of the most challenging conversations anyone has when you're a parent divorcing. And I had sleepless nights. And then at about 4:00 one morning, I woke up with this idea of creating a storybook. I used a family photo, and I put photographs before he was born, and then after he was born, pictures of his childhood and vacations and holidays and birthdays and athletic events and all the happy pictures that we have of him growing up. And then I mentioned that right now life is not so happy at home. You're listening to mom and dad fighting a lot, and we decided that there's a better way. If we live in two separate homes, life will be happier when you're with mom, life will be happier when you're with dad, and we'll still be a family. We'll always be a family, and we'll always love you, and we'll always be your parents, but it's going to be a change in the form of the family. And that's what I thought made a lot of sense for him. And so at the time of breaking the divorce news, we used this storybook so he could look through the pages that I wrote the text, added the photos, and it was a photo album at that time. And it became a script for us because we discussed it beforehand, his father and I, and we were aligned, and there was no judging and finger pointing and blaming. There was nothing about either one of the parents being bad or good. It was about we decided that this is the best way to flow ahead with our family. And my son was able to reread it over the next few days and weeks and months. And I used that concept when I founded the Child-Centered Divorce Network just a few months later. That was the first book I wrote. How do I tell the kids about the divorce? A Create-a-Storybook guide to preparing your children with love. Nowadays, parents will take the text, customize it about their family and put their family kids' names and all of that in it, and then go to Vistaprint or one of those places to professionally have the photos put into the book, so they have an actual book that they present to the kids about them and their family, and the kids can reread it over and over again. And it's been very successful internationally because it's a concept that keeps the parents on the same page. And when the parents don't feel that either one of them is being guilted or blamed, it allows them to have a better relationship going through the divorce and after the divorce. And then if they choose legal counsel who is child-centered and family-focused, then they're in good hands because they're not being encouraged to raise the conflict level, but they're encouraged to have the best, most smooth outcome. And that's good for everyone in the family long term.
Okay, so you had the book, you had the layout of it, and then from there, you're still doing your career at that time, the marketing career. Okay, and you already had, I guess, a background of kind of knowing how you can kind of release this book. So, what was the first step in that? Was it just simply putting it out on social media? Was it
Yeah,
what was the process
it's an
like?
ebook. It's an ebook.
Okay.
So I was always using digital resources even back then. And basically, I told friends and colleagues, and I started meeting on LinkedIn and other places, other divorce professionals, therapists, coaches, attorneys, mediators, those kinds of people. And I just let them know that I had this ebook and that I was doing coaching. And I also started the Child-Centered Divorce group on LinkedIn. We have over 4,000 members now of divorce professionals around the world. So there's a lot of people who gravitated to the name Child-Centered Divorce, who realized they liked that. And the professionals who are oriented in that direction are definitely in the kind of mindset that I think is a preferable mindset for anyone who's divorcing. So this has been a very slow process. I haven't gotten rich doing this, and I don't know anyone who has gotten rich in divorce coaching, but it's very fulfilling, and it's certainly been a business that's been successful. I sell ebooks and e-courses, and I do one-on-one coaching, and not only nationally, but I have clients in Australia and in Europe and South Africa. So it's been fascinating to realize that divorce, even though the legal parameters are different from state to state and country to country, the family factor of divorce is much more alike everywhere you go. The same problems are happening between the two parents and raising the kids and getting the kids to get through this without too much trauma. And so the challenges that people talk to me about are basically the same no matter what country you're in. And it's just rewarding to know that when parents get to understand they have other options, that the outcomes are usually better. Now, not everyone gravitates to child-centered divorce. And so there are people who are determined to have high conflict divorces. There are people who hate each other enough that all that matters is that they want to destroy one another as parents during and after the divorce. And so I will refer people with high conflict divorces to colleagues of mine who specialize in that because they are out there. And that's a very challenging issue. They are in the trenches dealing with people who really are creating havoc in one another's lives. So it's out of my realm because they're not interested in talking to me.
All right. So the now I'm trying to go back to the question because every time I ask you a question, you go off a crazy tangent. So I understand you're just passionate about it. I understand. So going back on kind of building your business, and putting that book together. So I know you're dealing with therapists, you're dealing with divorce attorneys, right? People that have had, I mean, a massive amount of education on this process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the confidence come from, right? Because sometimes, and I think there's that perception, right, where you're like, okay, well, I'm a coach, and this person is a divorce attorney. They went to, law school. Went through all this process. It was the confidence of putting the book out and kind of going through the whole process just come from your experience, or over time have you taken classes, or is it just simply that over time you kind of gain more knowledge, or what happened?
Being certified as a divorce coach is a whole process. So it's a course, it's a classes, but I have a strong background in psychology. My sister and all of my closest friends are therapists. So I've been surrounded by mental health my whole life. And being a writer, I like writing about mental health issues. So this was very innate for me, and very intuitive for me. And yes, most of it came from my own learning experience, working with clients and having various experiences with them and I've been doing this for over 15 years. So I've gotten better over the years because I've learned so much. But a lot of it is very much the same in that the issues are not that different usually. And it's a matter of reminding a lot of parents that this isn't the first divorce, and there's better ways of handling it. So you don't have to create a new road. You can learn from the experience of other people and get on board to do this in the best way for your kids. And parents need support and security, and kids need support and security. So that's the foundation of what all of this is about, is making everyone feel that the foundation of their lives isn't falling apart, and there's going to be a happier future ahead for the parents and for the kids, because this is one of the most disruptive experiences that anyone can have in life.
So with your situation, I know you have your relatives and you have a background in being a background in knowing therapists. I know in the real estate field, even though I have a background in construction, I have to relay to people that I'm not a contractor when I'm kind of going through the process. Is there anything like that? Because I mean, this is it seems like a newer field. How does that process work?
Well, the first thing when I have a form that everyone fills out if they're working with me, and the first thing I say is I am a divorce coach. I am not a psychotherapist, and there's a few sentences that explain what that is. I'm not there to go through their history and help them undo life challenges that happened when they were children. So this is not therapy. Coaching is about immediate actions and processes that you could use to smooth the path. It's a very simple, intuitive experience, and I help them deal with whatever challenges they have. No two families have the identical challenges, and we focus in on that. And by the way, there's a certification in the real estate world for certified divorce realtors.
Yeah.
And divorce realtors are also, they take a program to be certified to understand, because there's many challenges about who keeps the house. Should we keep the house, or must we sell the house to get funds to split? Is it better for the kids to live in one house, which is nesting, and the two parents alternate visiting the house? Should they have two separate homes? There's a multitude of challenges, and the fact that there's enough interest in that they became a certification in divorce, I thought is very interesting. And I work with people like that. Divorce realtors, divorce financial planners, all facets of surrounding areas that are affecting families. Depending if they have a business, then they need a consultant in that. But all of these things help them eliminate a lot of the most expensive fees, which are the attorney fees, and lowering the number of hours that they're dealing with the attorneys. So it can be, there's something called collaborative divorce, where you have all of these specialists together in one unit, all working to speed up and simplify the process. And it makes sense for a lot of people.
Thank you, Rosalind, for being on the podcast today. If someone's listening and they're looking to get more information, what's the best way of them reaching out to you?
Well, thank you. Child-Centered Divorce is my website. That's with an ED. Child-centereddivorce.com has all the information about everything that I offer, and you can contact me for a complimentary session to talk about whether I'm a good fit for you, as well as looking at all the services, books, ebooks, courses, and I have a free ebook right on the home page on post-divorce parenting, as well as tons and tons of articles about all facets of the divorce and co-parenting experience, so that there's lots and lots of free information, interviews and articles to support everyone. So no one should feel unsupported, and that helps everyone move ahead in the best possible way.
I'm going to finish off one last question. What's been the biggest hurdle in building your brand, in building your business and growing your business?
Well, people don't always understand that someone like me is out there, and they don't always, I can't tell you how many times I get told by professionals or other people saying, "Oh, Rosalind, I wish I knew you 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago when I was going through my divorce." So it's really for people to know that someone like me exists, and there are many of us out there. And the fact that these services will help them, especially be a support system for them, because it's such a difficult conversation to have and a difficult experience to go through. So that's been the biggest challenge, is just getting people to know. And most of my clients come from referrals from other people who say, "Hey, you need to talk to Rosalind because she'll be helpful."
Well, again, thank you, Rosalind. I think for everyone listening, I mean, just go on our website. It's in the show notes. She has a network of people. So, I mean, divorce attorneys, therapists. I mean, for even herself, I mean, she has a lot of content on there. So if you're just thinking about the process, or maybe it's something you're just thinking about on your own, you're saying the relationship's not working out where you thought it was, and you kind of just want to maybe talk to someone, I definitely believe Rosalind would be open to just having a conversation and kind of give you feedback, give you thoughts on your situation, even before maybe you take it to the next level. Or if it's something that in the past you had a child and you feel like there's something there and you just want someone to talk to, again, go in the show notes, talk to Rosalind. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, please share, and go in the show notes. Bye, everyone.